It seems like Lance Stroll is struggling to pick up the pace yet again, and the points difference in the Drivers' Championship says it all. Although many are reluctant in terms of whether or not Lawrence will fire his own son for the sake of his team being more competitive, one thing is for sure: Lance is underperforming massively and is ruining the beauty of the sport. So, with the competitive spirit of Lawrence Stroll and his wish to win races and championships sooner rather than later, could we see the father-son duo split up and effectively ruin Lance's racing career? Ever since Lawrence Stroll decided to buy into Formula One, it became evident that his son would be the polar bear of the sport, the most protected driver. I've started the video with this sentence because this is practically the root of all of Aston Martin's issues. Their inability to cope with the fact that had it not been for Lance's bad performance, the team would have already been far ahead of Mercedes. If you compare Alonso's points to Lance's, you'd notice a massive difference: 80 points. A similar one is present between Perez and Verstappen, but the Mexican driver has to go against a two-time world champion and a driver who is driving at the top of his game, in the most dominant car ever. Not that Alonso is not driving the wheels out of the AMR 23, but considering that Lance had a bit more time to accommodate himself in the rebranded team back in 2021, the deficit comes as a bit of a surprise. Nobody expected Lance to outperform Alonso, but having 37 points in 8 races and being 80 points behind your teammate speaks volumes about where you are right now as a driver. To compare that with the team that you're chasing in the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes, the Silverstone-based squad trails by only 13 points. If Lance drove the way he should have driven, then it's safe to say that the second position in this category would have been a given. And you are constantly hearing Alonso sharing advice and complimenting Lance's moves in Miami, but we're talking about an old fox here. If there is one thing that Alonso does best, it is understand the environment he is in, and as long as the AMR 23 isn't ready to win championships, then his relationship with Lance would remain the same. But rest assured that once Aston Martin brings tons of upgrades to the current version of their car and the future ones as well, in 2024 and 2025, Alonso's mindset will change and Stroll will be exposed even more. This leaves Lawrence, the father of Lance and the owner of their team, with no more than 2 options. The first one would be to fire Alonso and hire a younger driver, one that would see the team drop in the midfield yet again, but his son would be employed. And the other one would be to have this amazing, charismatic and proven champion remain in the team and pair him up with some other competitive driver in order for them to push for more, not just a second spot in the Constructors' Championship. I know you're guessing which choice Lawrence would make, as he's already spoken about Lance remaining in the team for as long as he is the owner of the team. And I know many of you are saying that had it not been for Lance racing in F1, his father wouldn't even have interest in entering the sport, which automatically means that we wouldn't see the current version of Aston Martin. But be that as it may, the performance of Stroll is truly devastating, and this is a perfect example of what a comfort zone does to you. Imagine if anyone else was in the place of Stroll. Take De Vries, Tsunoda or Sargent for example. These are the 3 most hated drivers in 2023. With Tsunoda exiting the group due to his quick maturing and understanding the game much better than the other 2, as the rookies are now struggling to get a hold of their cars and were given deadlines by their respective teams. Had they been part of Aston Martin, or if Stroll was driving for any other team, we'd probably have said goodbye to the Canadian driver much earlier. Nonetheless, Ralf Schumacher, one of the F1 experts, believes that a change in Aston Martin is coming. And although speaking in family terms, it won't make any sense to fire Lance Stroll. If Aston Martin wants to remain competitive, they need to hire another driver that would be able to not just score good points, but push Alonso to be a greater version of himself, and therefore dethrone Red Bull at the top in the following years. When talking about this matter, the former F1 driver said, "I believe a strong candidate for Charles Leclerc is also Aston Martin, as they also need to look around. Fernando Alonso will have another year after that. Who knows, Lawrence Stroll's son doesn't fulfill the season goals. They may need to bring in another strong driver for the future, building alongside Fernando Alonso." Yes, Leclerc's future with Ferrari is still under threat, and considering how fast the AMR 23 has proven to be, he might explore his options as soon as his contract with Ferrari is up. But that is a bit of a far-fetched scenario. From a financial point of view, it makes no sense for Aston Martin to keep Lance as their driver. And although he is the only reason that his father has entered the sport, he might not be the only reason that his father would remain one of the largest financial figures in it. Lawrence is now aware of the financial impact that the sport has on his own business, and his partnership with Mercedes until 2026 and the engine collaboration with Honda from the 2026 season onwards goes to show that he does have plans to win a championship sooner rather than later. However, the fact that the leader of the team is a 41-year-old man who, don't get me wrong, drives like an expert and is absolutely extracting the potential out of that car, but is far from the long-term investment for the team, goes to show that we are far from seeing the green Red Bull achieving its full potential. It is nearly impossible for Aston Martin to fight for second place in the Constructors' Championship because Mercedes can always count on both of their drivers finishing high in points, only if some of them, like Russell, make a silly mistake like he did in Montreal. However, these events are very rare, and what is more common is Lance's dropping out of Q1 and not being able to make up for his driving on the track. But in his defense, Mike Crack did say that the young Canadian climbing up the spots from P16 to P10 and then being promoted to P9 while stuck in a DRS train goes to show that he has the potential they are looking for, but is lacking the confidence to take that car to its absolute limits. When talking about Stroll's performance in Canada, one in which the young driver promised us a podium but was nowhere near sniffing it, Mike Crack said, "I think he did really well. In qualifying, he struggled with grip. And if you struggle like that and you don't have the confidence, then it's very difficult. During the race, I think he drove really well. We took him out of traffic, and when he was out of traffic, he managed the lap times of the front runners on hard tires. But if you are in this DRS train, it's really hard. To come from 16th to 9th is a great achievement. On paper, it looks only 9th, and when your teammate finishes 2nd, you think it's not a good performance. But when you see where you've come from, I think it was very good. We know he's very strong in high-speed circuits, and we have a couple of such circuits to come, so I'm confident that we can score with both drivers." Well, nobody really expects Mike or Alonso to go after Lance and call him out for his bad performance, as this could only be done by an expert or analyst that is not related to Aston Martin whatsoever. One of those is also David Kennedy, who went on to say that Alonso's performance has put Lance in the shadow yet again, and this time he has a lot more ground to cover than last year, when both he and Vettel were provided with a subpar car that was barely able to make it into the points. One thing is for sure, Alonso's contract with Aston Martin is hanging in the air, and while Lance is not expected to fight with the two-time world champion soon, he is expected to be in the top 5 constantly, at least if he understood how the sport works in the first place. Like this, the only logical solution for the Silverstone-based squad would be to have the most awkward father-son conversation and replace Lance with someone who is far more competitive and someone who could change when being put under pressure, simply because his seat would not be a guaranteed one, like Lance is currently enjoying right now. Do you think Lance is losing his job as an Aston Martin F1 driver? Let us know in the comments below.